I was in the middle of shaking Barry's hand, pride swelling in my chest, as he called me out in front of the whole department. Senior Operations Manager, my promotion. It was everything I'd worked for, and for a second, I felt a genuine rush of relief. I'd spent months busting my ass, late nights, complex contract negotiations, fixing problems before they even became problems. And now, it was finally paying off. The clapping was still going when the door to the conference room slammed open. Adam strolled in, grinning, a little too pleased with himself for my liking. Late, of course, like he always was. Barry's expression shifted. I caught the glance he exchanged with one of the higher-ups. And then, Barry opened his mouth again. Actually, scratch that. I think you'll all agree, we have someone else who's better suited to lead us into the future. My stomach dropped. Barry wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at Adam. Adam will be taking over as Senior Operations Manager, Barry continued, his voice full of praise. His vision, his potential, and his fresh perspective are exactly what we need to stay ahead in a competitive market. I stood there, frozen, the certificate of promotion heavy in my hands. My hard work, all of it, suddenly felt irrelevant. Adam's grin stretched wider. He turned to the room, accepting congratulations, slapping backs like he'd actually earned it. It took everything in me not to throw the certificate at him. The moment was slipping away, and I couldn't do anything about it. Barry hadn't even looked at me. I should have felt anger, but all I could muster was a quiet, burning confusion. My mind was struggling to process it. How had this happened? Adam had been riding his dad's coattails for years. I'd done the work, fought the battles. But somehow, Adam got the prize. The meeting ended, and I walked out with the others, still clutching the damn certificate. I needed answers. HR was no help. Tanya was friendly, but gave me nothing more than a couple of platitudes, insisting that it was an internal decision from the board. Is there any reason it wasn't discussed with me? I pressed. Tanya hesitated, and then it came out. The board decided months ago. They think Adam's got the right connections and a fresh perspective. They're banking on him, Greg. I felt my blood turn to ice. Adam's promotion wasn't a last-minute decision. My months of work, the countless hours I'd put into the project, none of it had even been considered. Before I could respond, Tanya added something else, almost like an afterthought. Maybe focus on your team for now. The bigger picture's shifting. I didn't need her to tell me that. I was already sidelined. I dragged myself back to my desk, the weight of the situation sinking in. That's when Ben, one of the guys on my team, pulled me aside. "Hey, Greg," he said quietly. "You know Adam's been telling Barry he solved a bunch of issues you handled months ago, right?" The anger flared inside me again, but I kept my voice low. "What? He's been taking credit for your work, telling Barry he fixed things he never even touched. It's a joke." I gritted my teeth. I had two choices: walk away, burn the bridge, or play along and stay in the game. For now, I chose to stay. I wasn't giving up on everything just yet, but the betrayal was sharp, real. I couldn't let Adam get away with this. As I stewed on my next move, my phone buzzed. A message from a key client I'd been working with directly, completely bypassing Adam. It was a small victory, but one I wasn't about to ignore. I'd been put on the sidelines, sure, but I still had leverage, and Adam wasn't the only one who could play the game. I left HR feeling like I'd just been handed a pile of nothing. Tanya's smile was warm, but her words were cold. "I'm sure you understand, Greg. It's an internal decision. These things are complicated." I stared at her, waiting for more, but she didn't offer it. "When did this decision get made?" I pressed, my voice more measured than I felt. Why wasn't I even consulted? Tanya shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable now. "The board made their call months ago," she finally admitted, glancing at her computer screen like it could give her a script to follow. Adam's family connections were a big factor, of course. His perspective? It's just different. They're focused on the future, and Adam fits that vision. Family connections. Vision. The words twisted in my gut. "You're telling me my work doesn't matter?" I asked, trying to keep it casual but failing. "I've been on this project for years." She hesitated, then shrugged. "The company's direction is shifting. Adam's the one they think will lead us forward. Fresh ideas, family influence. It's all part of the plan." I nodded, though the words barely registered. The truth was sinking in. I wasn't part of the plan. My work, my efforts, none of it was enough. I was just the guy who'd been putting in the hours while Adam coasted on his last name. I felt my blood simmer as I processed everything she'd said. My promotion had been decided long before I ever got close. Adam had been groomed for this position, and I'd never even had a chance. "Anything else?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation from derailing completely. Tanya smiled again, but it wasn't comforting. "Focus on your team, Greg. They need you right now. You've been doing a great job leading them." Great job leading them. Another stab in the gut. I was being sidelined, and all she could do was remind me of the work I could be doing for the team. Work that would be credited to Adam when it was all said and done. I stood up, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. "Thanks, Tanya. Really? You've been helpful." She nodded. "Of course. Let me know if you need anything else." I left HR with my hands clenched into fists. The hallway felt too narrow, and the noise from the office seemed distant, like I was already on the outside looking in. When I got back to my desk, I tried to dive into my email, anything to take my mind off what had just happened. But my brain was spinning. Should I stick around and keep playing the game? Or was it time to walk away and burn the whole thing to the ground? As I ran through my options, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, surprised to see a message from one of our key clients, a guy named Tom. He wanted to speak with me, directly, bypassing Adam. I stared at the message for a second, the weight of it sinking in. I hadn't even realized how much I needed that. I'd been trying to prove my worth to Barry, to the board, but here was my validation, in black and white. I was still in demand. Even if the company didn't know it, the clients did. Tom didn't care about Adam's family connections. He cared about results, and he knew I delivered. The sting of what had just happened with the promotion still burned, but this was a moment to hold on to. I didn't know what my next step was yet, but I knew I wasn't going down without a fight. I didn't quit. Not yet anyway. As much as I wanted to walk out, leaving this circus behind, I knew I had to play it smarter. I wasn't just going to roll over for Adam and let him waltz into a position that wasn't earned. For now, I decided to stick around and keep doing what I did best, getting results. The clients still trusted me. Hell, some of them preferred working with me. That's why when Tom, the guy who'd bypassed Adam earlier, called me to finalize the deal, I didn't hesitate. I was handling it on my own terms. Adam could keep his shiny new title. I wasn't about to let him take credit for my work. The deal went through smoothly. Tom was happy. I was happy. But then came the logistics meeting that would change everything. Adam was leading the meeting, and I watched from the back of the room as he fumbled over the simplest details. He stumbled through operational processes that I'd ironed out months ago, details I'd worked through to make sure everything ran without a hitch. I could feel the eyes of the room shift, even as Adam tried to mask his uncertainty with charm. But it was all surface level, no real substance behind it. I had to bite my tongue, but a part of me was relieved. Adam wasn't just coasting on his last name, he was outright floundering. That gave me leverage. I started looking for ways to subtly highlight his shortcomings without drawing attention to myself. I passed notes to Tanya, my team, anyone who could catch on. Small things, nothing overt. Just observations about Adam's lack of knowledge. "We need a better system for tracking this," I'd whisper to Ben, making sure Adam wasn't in earshot. Ben would pass it along to Tanya, who was already keeping an eye on things. I was setting the stage. Adam's facade wouldn't hold up much longer. Then came the email from John, a colleague from another department. He'd been digging into shipping regulations, looking for a loophole that could save the company millions in operating costs. I scanned the email, and something clicked. This wasn't just useful, it was my ticket to the top. If I could leverage this information properly, I could change the entire game. I set up a meeting with Leon, one of our major European partners, who'd been reluctant to finalize a contract without certain assurances. Word had it that Leon wasn't a fan of Adam, especially after a few botched negotiations where Adam had struggled to keep up. When I mentioned the shipping loophole to Leon, his tone changed immediately. "I'm glad you're involved, Greg," Leon said, his voice quieter now. "Honestly, I've been concerned about working with Adam. He's not exactly seasoned when it comes to these kinds of deals." I felt a surge of satisfaction. Adam had failed to impress someone who mattered, and Leon wasn't the only one. Over the next few days, I kept my ear to the ground. I learned that Adam had been trying to rewrite the history of the projects we'd worked on together. He'd been telling Barry and the board that he was the one who'd solved the biggest problems I'd solved long before he even understood the logistics behind them. It made my blood boil, the nerve of the guy. But instead of confronting him directly, I kept playing the game. Every time Adam slipped up or took credit for my work, I made sure someone noticed. I wasn't going to let him bury my contributions. I started preparing my own pitch for the board. I wasn't going to sit back and let Adam's incompetence drive the company into the ground. With the shipping loophole and the leverage from my European deal, I had a way to take control again. Quietly, strategically. No one knew what was coming, but I did. And I'd make sure that when the dust settled, it was my name that was at the top of the list. I'd barely gotten a full night's sleep when I found a message from Barry in my inbox, asking to meet. I knew exactly what this was about. He wasn't wasting any time either. As soon as I sat down in his office, Barry didn't waste a single breath. "Greg," he started, like we were still friends. "You've been a bit quiet lately. I've noticed that." I kept my face neutral, even though I could feel my blood pressure rising. "What do you mean by quiet?" Barry leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "You've got the skills, Greg, no doubt. But I think the team needs more from you right now. We're looking for someone who shows initiative, who steps up more in front of the board, not someone who's just doing their job in the background." I bit the inside of my cheek to stop myself from responding too quickly. "I've been working with the team, making sure everything runs smoothly." "That's great," Barry said, but it was a dismissive great. "But right now, we need someone who's going to lead, someone like Adam. He's got that vision, that spark." He lowered his voice like he was telling me a secret. "People are excited about Adam. We need someone who's more forward-thinking, someone who gets the bigger picture." I swallowed the bile in my throat. Barry wasn't seeing the full picture. Adam was a sideshow. The real work, the value, that was mine. But Barry had already made up his mind. He was too focused on Adam's potential to see what was right in front of him. The next blow came during the board meeting, when Adam took full credit for the deal I'd closed with the European partner. Barry looked like he was about to stand up and applaud when Adam started spouting off about how he had negotiated the terms. My name wasn't mentioned once. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there, stone-faced, and listened to Adam parade around as though he'd done anything but screw up the original negotiation. I couldn't let this go on. I'd given everything for this company, and now it was all slipping through my fingers. Adam was rewriting history, making sure my work went unacknowledged. But I had one thing left, one piece of leverage. I called John again, asking for the latest on that shipping loophole. He sent me an update almost immediately. The loophole could save the company $3 million in the first quarter alone. That was a number I could use, a number I could walk into the next board meeting with and make sure everyone saw my value, even if Adam and Barry wanted to ignore it. I began preparing the presentation, sharpening my strategy, making sure every detail was covered. It was my moment to take back control. If they weren't going to give me the recognition I deserved, I'd take it. No more letting Adam play the hero with my work. But as I was finalizing everything, Barry called me in again. "Greg, about that shipping loophole," he said, and it hit me instantly. He wanted to tie me up with Adam. "You should share your findings with Adam before you present them to the board," Barry suggested, almost too casually. I felt my chest tighten. He wasn't asking me to collaborate. He was trying to sideline me again, make sure Adam got in on the credit. If I showed Adam the loophole, he'd take it, claim it, and I'd be left holding the bag again. "No," I said, a little too sharply. Barry's eyes narrowed, but I didn't back down. "This is my work, Barry. I've already put the hours in. I'm presenting it, on my own." Barry's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He just gave me a look, like I was a problem he didn't want to deal with. Fine, let him think that. I had the leverage now. Adam wasn't going to see a cent of the credit this time. I sat down at my desk, checking over my notes one last time. The board meeting was tomorrow. This was it. No more waiting for recognition. I was done playing nice. If they wanted to see who had the real vision, I was going to show them. The morning of the board presentation, I felt something like calm settle over me. Maybe it was the fact that I knew I had all the right pieces, or maybe it was the weight of everything that had built up to this moment. But whatever it was, I was ready. Adam, on the other hand, was scrambling. I could tell he had been working from a version of the shipping regulations that wasn't fully updated, more holes than answers. I'd seen the last draft of his slides, and I wasn't impressed, but I didn't care. He had no idea what he was about to walk into. The room filled up with the board members, their chatter fading as the presentation started. Barry gave a brief introduction, his eyes briefly meeting mine. There was something tense about the way he looked at me, but I didn't pay it much attention. This wasn't about him anymore. Adam went first. His presentation was smooth for the most part, but there was something off. He kept referencing numbers that didn't quite add up, and avoided some of the deeper details I knew would come under scrutiny. When it was time for him to explain the potential savings from the shipping strategy, he faltered. He glossed over how much we could actually save. And when one of the board members asked about the specifics of the shipping rates, he didn't have a clear answer. I raised my hand, just enough to get their attention. "Actually, if I may," I said, standing up. Adam gave me a quick, nervous glance, but I ignored it and launched into my own breakdown. I explained how we could save millions by optimizing our shipping lanes and how the loophole would allow us to enter new markets without the crushing tariffs. I made sure to go into the details Adam had avoided, using numbers and data I'd worked on for months. The board was listening intently. When I hit them with the potential $3 million savings for the first quarter, their eyes widened. I saw a few people nod, impressed. Adam tried to recover, but it was too late. The board had started to notice the holes in his presentation. As I went into further detail, his confident posture faltered. When I casually dropped a fact about the shipping rates, something Adam had glossed over as if it wasn't a big deal, he stammered, trying to backtrack, but his credibility was slipping by the second. "Wait a minute," one of the board members said. "You're saying the rate you quoted isn't correct?" He looked at Adam, who couldn't meet his gaze. No, that's not what I meant," Adam said, fumbling for a response. He was clearly lost. I stepped in smoothly. "Actually, Adam, that's exactly what the data shows," I said, my voice steady. "The rate you mentioned is outdated. We can do better, and I've already factored that into the savings we're presenting today." There was a brief, awkward silence, and I could practically feel the shift in the room. The board's attention was on me now. Barry was watching, his face flushed, and I knew this wasn't going the way he'd hoped. Adam's weak performance was suddenly the focal point. I answered their follow-up questions with ease, detailing the strategy and its long-term benefits. Every time they turned to Adam, asking him to elaborate, he stumbled again, and I saw the frustration build in Barry's eyes. He tried to steer the conversation back to Adam, but it was too late. The board wasn't buying it anymore. When the meeting ended, I knew I had made my mark. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was undeniable. I had stepped in, taken control, and exposed Adam for what he really was, a figurehead with no substance behind him. The room was still buzzing as people filed out, and I lingered at the back, knowing this was my moment. Later that day, I was summoned to Barry's office. "Greg," he started, his voice strained. "Can we talk?" I walked in, my mind still racing from the presentation. Barry sat back in his chair, exhaling sharply. "You know, I didn't expect it to go like that. You've put me in a difficult position." I didn't say anything. He continued, clearly not happy, but trying to keep his tone even. "The board, they're not thrilled with Adam. They're starting to question his ability to lead. If things don't turn around, we might have to make some tough decisions." I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to say to that. Adam had dug his own grave, but it seemed like Barry was looking to blame someone for his failure. "I'm not saying we're ready to replace him, Greg," Barry added, his eyes scanning my face. "But if things keep heading in this direction, it might not be his future here." I looked at him, keeping my voice steady. "I'll make sure the company's best interests are the priority, Barry. That's what I've been doing all along." Barry nodded, but I could see the wheels turning in his mind. He was more concerned about damage control than anything else. I left his office with a quiet sense of satisfaction. Adam's time was running out, and if the company didn't want him, they'd be looking at me soon enough. The path was clear now. The fallout from the presentation was swift and brutal. It didn't take long for Adam to be sidelined. The board, clearly shaken by his performance, quickly reassigned him to a less influential role within the company. His future at the firm was uncertain. Barry's hands were tied. He tried to maintain the appearance of support, but I could see the tension in his posture, his words clipped when we spoke. It was clear who had the board's confidence now. That confidence was now mine. A few days later, I got the call. The board wanted me to take over the project, officially. Senior operations manager. I had done what I always did, delivered. The same board that had ignored my contributions and propped up Adam now openly acknowledged my leadership, my expertise. I was being recognized for the work I'd put in, and they didn't mention once how much potential I had, or how my last name didn't come with an investment portfolio behind it. It was just about results. The promotion was real this time. It wasn't some hollow consolation. Barry called me into his office later that day, clearly trying to salvage something from the wreckage. "Greg," he started, his voice low, "you've earned this, but I want to make one thing clear. This isn't just about the shipping loophole or the European deal. You've shown leadership in ways we didn't expect." I nodded, not letting the satisfaction show. "Thanks, Barry, but this is about the work, all of it." His gaze shifted briefly, almost looking away. "Adam didn't rise to the occasion, Greg, and now, well," he trailed off, the words hanging between us. "Understood," I said, not needing him to elaborate. Adam's failure had been glaring. The rest of the day felt like a blur. Congratulations from colleagues who hadn't even acknowledged my existence 6 months ago. Handshakes from people who had been too busy looking at Adam to see what I was doing. It felt good, but there was a quiet part of me that knew I wasn't done. Not yet. By the end of the week, Adam was all but gone. It wasn't a public thing, but word spread quickly. He wasn't in meetings anymore, wasn't making the rounds with clients, wasn't even in the office most days. It wasn't long before I heard that he'd quietly exited the company altogether. It wasn't dramatic, no scandal, just gone. Sitting in my new office a few months later, it hit me. This was the seat I was meant to have. I didn't need a family name to back me up. I'd built this from the ground up with nothing but knowledge and work ethic. That's what had gotten me here, and that's what would keep me here. The quiet satisfaction lingered as I looked out the window at the city, the projects I'd worked on finally coming to fruition. Adam was just a footnote now, but I knew the difference between him and me had always been clear. I wasn't waiting for someone to hand me anything. I'd earned every damn inch.